Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of What the Dementia by Bambu Care. I'm your host, Brianna Wilson. I am a certified dementia practitioner and the founder of Bambu Care. So, on today's topic, we will be addressing a question that comes up quite often, and that question is it okay to lie to a person living with dementia? So, maybe you've heard the term therapeutic lying or fiblets or some other rendition of the terms. Now, a lot of people argue that lying within itself is not therapeutic and you shouldn't lie. Others say that they just can't bring themselves to lie, and so therefore it brings them distress because their partner isn't responding well to their truths, but they still don't want to lie either. So I'll tell you where I stand on this topic, okay? So I like to say that it is okay to fib, which is an acronym and it stands for fill in the blanks. So it is okay to fill in the blanks for your partner living with dementia. What we have to understand is that their reality, based on their memories and perceptions, are going to be different from ours. And because it's so much harder for them to retain new information, what ends up happening is that you tell them something which will temporarily evoke some emotion or some response, and then they will eventually forget that they asked you about it or what answer you gave them. But sometimes, whatever emotion that was evoked will linger. And this can linger for hours, even days, and they won't really understand why. But it can carry over into how they further respond to other things in their life, like wanting to eat, wanting to get out of bed, wanting to participate in activities, how they communicate with you, okay? Things like that. So, what you want to do when appropriate is fill in the blanks for what is their current reality. So, you want to provide them with the missing piece that they need to be okay in and make sense of their current reality. The key is that the fib should be as realistic as possible. You don't just want to tell them any old thing just off the wall doesn't make sense, okay? Now, in my opinion, this technique works really well with redirecting or distracting. So you offer them the missing piece of information and then you redirect or distract, which in some cases may not even be necessary depending on the situation. And sometimes further questioning is also helpful too, especially if you can tell that they have something on their mind and are experiencing emotions that would benefit from being expressed and validated. So let's go through an example real quick. So let's say that your dad is asking about where his brother Sam is as he hasn't seen him in a while. So you know that Sam passed away 2 years ago. And Dad actually attended Sam's funeral, but he doesn't remember Sam passing or attending the funeral. So there's so many ways that you can respond to Dad, and there really is no right or wrong answer per se, okay? Just some responses are better than others and therefore lead to better outcomes. So I typically like answering a question with a question when I can, because it allows me space to come up with the most realistic, appropriate answer. For what I do, a lot of times I don't know the whole story about the person. I'm just now meeting this person in person. And so the best way to kind of understand where they're at is by asking questions, okay? So, for example, you could say something like, "You know what? I haven't either. What was he up to the last time you heard from him?" His answer will give you an idea of where he's at in his reality. So maybe he will tell you that he was still working at the accounting firm and had just gotten back from his trip to Virginia. Or maybe he'll tell you, well, he had gotten sick. I'm not really sure with what, but I remember him telling me he wasn't feeling too well. But I haven't heard from him or seen him since. This will give you an opportunity to adjust your response based on his last memory of his brother and better fill in the blank. Oftentimes, we want to avoid telling people that someone has died, but at the same time, it may be the most appropriate response based on their last memory of them. You just want to be mindful of how you break the news, if you so choose to, and then pay special attention to how they respond. If they respond catastrophically, you have to be ready to provide support and or space. Now, it's my personal belief that everyone has the right to mourn at least once, okay? But we don't want our partner in this constant state of mourning, right? Especially if they ask about a certain deceased person quite often. But the first time they ask, if it's an appropriate response based on their last memory of them, then give them that opportunity to mourn. However, if they take it badly, please don't just keep telling them that the person is dead every time they ask about them. You get what I'm saying? Now, some people don't respond badly to news about death. For some, it's just like, oh, really? I must have forgot. God rest their soul. And they can move on. So you really just have to use your best judgment based on where your partner is at in their reality. Now, the overall goal of filling in the blanks is to reduce suffering and stress for your partner, while also respecting them as a human and a human with emotional needs. It's never a good idea to just lie to your partner all willy-nilly because you assume that they won't know the difference. Unfortunately, many people believe that just because a person has some sort of cognitive deficit, that they are just completely detached from reality and won't be aware of such deception. But this is not always the case, guys, and your partner may actually be more aware than you think, which is why asking questions to get a better understanding of where they are in their reality and why they may be asking the particular question is really helpful in providing you with the additional information that you need to provide the best response or action, whether it's fibbing, validating, redirecting, or distracting. Now, let me just get this off my chest because it does bother me quite a bit if I'm being honest. This should not be a war of methods, which some professionals and people in general like to do. They put up all these different methods against one another and tell you why you shouldn't use a certain method and that this or that method is outdated. In my opinion, it is much more helpful to be aware of the different tools available to you and knowing when it's better to use one method or technique over another. Because the reality is, no one technique is ever 100% effective or appropriate. You have to be flexible and willing to adjust your approach. An approach you use one day may not be effective another day. A technique you use for one situation may not carry over to the next. So, guys, please don't box yourself into just one technique. Instead, learn when it's most appropriate to tell a lie or fib, when it's most appropriate to validate or redirect or distract, when it's better to give them space or actually hold space for them with your quiet presence. And do what you can to best meet your partner's needs at the time, okay? So, in short, yes, it is okay to lie, or as I like to say, fib, meaning fill in the blanks for your partner if that's the most appropriate response. So, next time you decide to lie, just ask yourself, what is my purpose in telling them this misinformation? Is it to intentionally deceive them, or is it to simply help my partner fill in the blanks for what is their reality and help them make just a little bit more sense of their world? The answer to this question, guys, will be your guide in knowing if you are lying for the quote unquote right reasons. Okay? So that wraps up this episode. It was a quickie, but definitely a goodie, at least in my opinion. I really do hope that this podcast was informative and that you learned something of value. Remember, we will be posting an episode twice a month until we can resume our normal posting schedule. So definitely follow or subscribe to our podcast if you haven't already. If you have any questions, comments, or future podcast requests, you can send us a voice message on whatthedementia.com or send us an email at podcast@whatthedementia.com. So thank you guys so much for joining us on another episode of What the Dementia by Bambu Care. We look forward to catching you on the next episode. Take care, and until next time, stay strong, care on, and remember, you are not alone. Bambu Care is always here.